wrote content. Sometimes it worked with IE, sometimes it worked with Netscape, sometimes it was horribly broken in the browser that you weren't writing for. And as this progresses, I think that we'll have web applications like that, that are, you must run this on the Windows server and you must have an IE client. And on the other end, open developers that will try and write it for both. And of course, Microsoft writing, locking out their proprietary extensions so that open source developers can't target IE clients. So I think that will happen, but that doesn't play into the big strength of the Web 2.0. As this comes about, I think that the open standards will take an early lead because, well, Microsoft isn't the innovator. Historically, Microsoft has been able to play catch-up by just brute force, by pumping dollars into it. So they don't need to innovate and haven't been. So open source will take an early lead in the Web 2.0 battle. Now, as new web services come to light, they'll have to choose between, okay, we can go the Microsoft route, which has always worked for us before, or we can use the open source route where it has all these new features and we can talk to this great killer app. We can talk to all this other stuff. And on the Microsoft side, if anybody has developed using Microsoft technologies, VBScript, Visual C++, it's not that you can't write for a more open architecture, but you're just so restricted in the ways that you can do it. And Microsoft developers just don't have that initiative to learn how to develop the right way. So there'll be that decision that new players coming to market will have to make, whether they go the Microsoft way or the open source way. And open source will win that battle because, not just because open source is the nice people in the sandals, but open source has that, hey, we can work with this and this and this and this. So, open source will win that initial push because they're the innovator. And then as new stuff comes to market, they'll get a significant portion of that as well. Now, we'll see a lot of traditional desktop apps, even ones that you wouldn't think of, moving to Web 2.0, just because of all the benefits, all the things like, hey, I can take this Photoshop and put it online, sell licenses for a day, which is something that they can't do right now. You sell a Photoshop license for a day for $2. Put out a press release, hey, we've got this new filter, it gets picked up by Slashdot, you click on that, go to Photoshop, buy a license for a day, go into Photoshop.com, make a pretty picture, and then save it to your blog. Adobe would love something like that because it will expose new people to the product. It's easier for them to manage licenses. Software as a service has just tremendous benefits from a licensing perspective. They get that continued revenue. It's easier for them to enforce licenses. They don't have to say, hey, let's sell this one copy of Photoshop to a company. Let's license every developer that they have. So there's a big incentive for traditional software developers that you wouldn't think would be Web 2.0 applications to push their product to that. Now, of course, as they do, they get to say, okay, let's interact with this service. Let's be able to print it out at Walmart.com, and all the benefits of everybody else. It's the same thing where, on eBay, the value is from the number of people that are in it. well, it's going to be the same thing with Web 2.0 in general, where the more companies that are producing Web 2.0 applications, the better the interoperability will be. So this is going to be another case, or another case of Microsoft having to fight a war, platform versus platform. This isn't platform versus app. This is platform versus a new way of thinking. And Microsoft will try and do their extended embrace, extinguish, where they make the proprietary extensions, but that is exactly the opposite of the strength of Web 2.0. You know, it's, hey, let's interrupt with everything. And as Microsoft tries to fight that, that's exactly their weakness in the new platform. One of the neat things that's going to happen as software transitions from the desktop to the web is that software versions will end. Like I said before with software licensing, you know, if you have Photoshop.com, there isn't a way to say you can access Photoshop7.com, but as soon as you go to Photoshop8.com, you need to pay us another license. That doesn't play well into the Web 2.0 concept, where updates can just be pushed out as needed. And you know, it's another big benefit for software companies. They don't have to deliver patches. They don't have to regression test and support 5-year-old products. They can say, let's support Photoshop.com and hope to hell everything is running okay. And if it's not, then we run the patch to fix it, and all of our customers are running the exact same code. Which is just a tremendous cost-saving measure for them. And as applications move from the traditional client PC to the network, the client obsolescence slows. It doesn't matter if you're running Photoshop.com on Pentium 4 2.6 gigahertz or Pentium 4 3 gigahertz. All that matters is the bandwidth, and really the obsolescence is at the server end, making sure that the bandwidth is there, making sure storage is there. Moore's law covers processing power, and that will really take care of that on the server end. But I think where we're going to see the bottlenecks is bandwidth and storage coming up. Just like Jason Scott said in the last talk, MP3 is an old technology, and the processing power to do it, just wasn't there when it was developed. We're going to start seeing very similar things like that on the server end, where somebody could make a Windows replacement today, browser it or platform in a browser, but without the bandwidth to deliver streaming video in that from your local DVD drive, there's still very real limitations to it. So that server obsolescence is going to be one of the big battles to fight. Read over here. You did everything way out of order. So let me see here. Does anybody have any questions so far? Yeah.
Well, why do you think web thin clients will be any more successful than
traditional thin clients? Well, traditional thin clients have a lot of limitations. that the web-thin clients won't. Now, I'm not saying that we'll have traditional thin clients working with Web 2.0 apps. I think that as development happens, if a balance can be stricken, where Photoshop.com can do some rendering on your local system, as well as utilizing the server resources when it's appropriate. I think that that'll be the best solution, where we can find a balance in that. And with that, it doesn't exclude a traditional thin client from accessing it. If a traditional thin client just doesn't have any resources to do it locally, it can happen at the server. And that's just something that isn't covered by any Web 2.0 technologies today. It might be a Web 3.0. So I think that'll be a very interesting thing that happens, where the client doesn't matter as much, but each will have its limitations. If I'm doing Photoshop.com on my PDA, I'm going to have bandwidth limitations for however I'm accessing it, plus display, plus input, plus processing. So it could be where if you access it on PDA, you have limited capabilities. Thin client would be another step. Pentium 60 would be another step. And maybe the platform can kind of detect how you're accessing it and what your client capabilities are, and utilize it effectively. Another thing that is going to have to kind of come up is network storage. I really like Gmail just for the concept that it's 2 gigabytes of storage that I don't have to manage on my desktop computer. It's frowned upon right now to use one of the utilities to use connected mounted as a file system, but I think that pretty quickly we'll see some high profile names actually offering that, where it is a network share. Probably ad supported, probably with a paid option. And if they do a good job of it, probably using REST or some other nice API for letting other services interact with it, you can host your eBay images there, or host podcast links. They're fed off your blogger.com account. So I think storage from the network side is something that we're going to see some advances in pretty quickly. Any other questions? All right. Well, that's all I have then. Don't hold me as at 9. All right, thank you.
You received for Microsoft. I've heard things like their existing code is part of the problem. They having trouble delivering on new features that people are willing to shell money for.
Well, any big code base is just a problem, especially on the proprietary software side, where you have to pay people to manage it. It's tough to have those millions of lines of code and try and do something innovative with it while still maintaining that backwards compatibility. So I think it's a big problem for them, but I don't think it's a threat in the manner that no matter what, they still have that installed base of Windows 98 people that aren't going to change. I don't think that their problems in managing that alone will attribute to their downfall.
But I have heard the argument that the amount of code they have to maintain to be compatible with those older apps, adding a lot of overhead to that process into even Windows Vista. One of the things Microsoft stated, Gates has stated, is that they consider breaking backwards compatibility to be a lost asset.
Yes. And, you know, that's